All right. So before we move along into some more additional topics in this basics section, I think it's important to take a little pit stop and talk about how to set up our project directories and autosave, etc. All things that are really important to any workflows, kind of like figuring out how Houdini handles files in the most basic sense in terms of your assets and everything. Most of us work in a project directory. We have got a structure that we like to adhere to, and a lot of apps will have sort of standards that they set. For example, in Cinema 4D, if you start to import textures, you get Cinema 4D will start asking you if you want to have textures placed in the text folder if they're not already there, and the text folder is sort of like a standard. Well, in Houdini, we can create a project directory and, store our information and our projects there in a way that is standard to Houdini. So I'm just going to go quickly over how to get that done. So there are a couple of ways. I will show you one way, and then I'm going to show you the next way I'm going to show you after that is the way I prefer to do it. So let's just create a new project directory using the method that is under the file menu. It says new project here. So I'm just going to click this. You can see it pops up this window, and here's a list of, this tells us where our job variable will be set to. The $job variable is a token that points directly to the project structure that you're going to create. So here you can see it's defaulting to somewhere in my documents, Houdini projects, new project. That's not necessarily where I want to go. It's building this path based off of the home variable, $home, which is defined as well in a different section of Houdini. So it's going to create a directory by default in this location on my hard drive, and it's going to create all these folders for us. We've got a geo folder, digital assets, sims, a text folder that should look familiar, and then we can add custom folders here if we want. So I'm going to change this project path to something that is more suitable. So let's click this icon with the page, and this brings up a browser here. I'm going to navigate to the project directory that I've been working out of. So bear with me for a second. And in here, this is lesson C. So I'm going to create a, let's say here, I want to create a new folder called C. And we're in lesson 2C now. And I'm going to say I want to create my cool project structure, and we're going to say accept. You can see here now it has changed that to the project directory that we set, and inside of that project structure folder that we created, it's actually creating another folder called new project, which is defined up here. I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger so I can see this file path. And I'm going to change this. I just want to have my project directory go into this under lesson C. So actually, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to bring over my directory that I created here. I created the C directory, and you can see there's nothing in it. So I want to create my project directory inside this folder. So I'll say up here, I'll say my cool project dir, and then hit accept. And what that did is if I pop back here, it says it has created my cool project directory, and it has created all these folders in there. So that's cool. And then, for example, if I wanted to save here, I've got along the left-hand side, by default, it's in the job folder, the $job, which has been defined by our project directory that we just created. So there's a couple variables on the side here, like $hip is located where your actual hip file is. And since we haven't saved this hip file, it doesn't know where to go, so it's just going into my documents. But if I go back to the job directory and then I save my project here, like So I'm going to call this my new project version 1. Actually, let's keep with our naming convention and call this my cool project version 1. That should be great. So hit accept. And now if I pop over here, you can see in this directory we created under C, my cool project directory and my cool project. And then we've got all of our stuff right here. So if we ever need to reference anything in these folders, we can use the $job token to make it a little bit quicker to get to our stuff, which you'll see a lot more of this later on. Cool. So let's talk about the other way. I like to set my variables up. So I'm going to go back out here and just say, for example, I wanted to manually create this another directory. I'm going to say, let's just create a new folder next to it. I'm going to create another project directory, and oops, I'm going to just rename this and call it Mark's cool project dir. And I'm just note that I'm using underscores. It tends to work better if you're using underscores everywhere with Houdini. So that's cool. So I'm going to hop into Mark's cool project directory, and you can see that there's nothing there. Obviously, we didn't do this automated file directory creation. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually I'm going to go up here and go under edit, aliases and variables. So here, under variables section, you can see this is where all your job, your hip, and all that stuff is defined. And since I saved this project already in this in the other project directory, you can see that all these fields are populated. So to get rid of that, I'm going to just create a new scene. We're going to say new. So now we're in untitled hip. I'm going to go back to edit, aliases, and variables. Under the variables tab, you can see that it's just defaulted my hip location to be in my user folder, and it looks like it held on to that job variable that we had set before. We're going to just set this manually now. So I want this job variable to point to that directory that I just created. So I'm going to select it here. You can see that it pops up down at the bottom. So navigating back to my directory that I've got here, I want to change this to Mark's cool project directory. I'm going to right click this, copy the address. This is up in the bar of the Windows Explorer. Just going to right click it, copy the address, go over here. I'm going to Control A to select all and Control V to paste it. And then I'm going to hit enter. You can see that that has changed this right here. So that's cool. Now, if I go back and I hit File, Save, and I just navigate to my job directory, you can see there's nothing in there. And I can just save this as Mark's cool project. All right. And then we'll just call that version 1 and hit accept. Now, if I go back to my directory here, you can see it's created Mark's cool project. I prefer to start in empty directories and build my own structure, just because that way I don't have a bunch of empty folders like over here. I probably won't end up using half of this stuff, like the HDA or the scripts folder or the video folder. I probably will not be throwing anything in my video folder. I'll just be rendering my images out here, and then, you know, typically I'll have like a Houdini directory and an After Effects directory and all that other stuff. I kind of organize my project structures by program. So, you know, typically I'll just basically render into the render folder and whatever. It's personal preference, and I figured I'd show you both ways. That way you can choose which one works the best for you. So cool. The next thing that I wanted to discuss is how to enable autosave. I'm an autosave person. Without autosave, I'm basically lost. I would be losing hours and hours of work every day because I have a hard time hitting the save button. I just don't do it. I'm just not one of those guys. So let's just get that sort of figured out here. Now, if we close this out and go to under Edit, you can see there is an autosave option down at the bottom here. So if I tick that button, Houdini will start autosaving. Also, if I look under Edit, Preferences, and Save and Load options, you can see here that it's going to automatically, this is under my save and load options, yeah. It's going to automatically save every 1 minute. And you can change your autosave method. I just leave it as default, and I'll explain what this does in just a second. So it's probably actually at this point, if we're lucky, I think because it's only set to be a minute, it will start creating, let's go back to, we're in C, Mark's cool project directory. It should start making automatic backups. I'm just going to check and see. It's probably because we haven't done anything. I'm just going to throw it on a geo node. And we'll just let that sit for a second. Now, what you'll find is that the way Houdini works is by default, it's going to write your autosave file to disk, but it's going to overwrite the actual current file that you're in and dump the previous version into the backup folder. So that's like a little bit different. I know the default behavior in most applications is that it lets you keep working on whatever you're working on, and then it stores the snapshot of of your autosave in like an autosave folder somewhere. But the current file that you're on won't change until you save it. This is the opposite of that. Your current file will always be being overwritten, but it's going to be saving copies of the backup into a different folder. It's a subtle difference, but it's just important to note that, even though you're autosaving over yourself continuously, it is still dumping a copy of what it was just before it autosaved into a directory. And you can see down here, we've got, it has successfully saved Mark's cool project, 01.hiplc at 21/19/16/2019. Okay, cool. So if I hop over here into our project directory, you can see that the most recent timestamp is 9/19. So it's actually saving, it's overwriting this file, and then if I hop into the backup, it's actually saving the older version. It's backing up the older version. So these timestamps will be the, if we need to roll back to an earlier version, those will be here, and out here, this is constantly being overwritten. So just important to note. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close down Houdini real quick and then open it back up just to show you what happens by default. So just going to close this. And let's go and open Houdini back up. Cool. So here we are. Now, if we go back up to our edit section here and look at our autosave, you can see that it is no longer checked. By default, we checked this and it started autosaving in our last session, but when we closed Houdini down and turned it back on, this autosave checkbox is no longer checked. And it's kind of a tricky process to get this to stay on, but it is a lifesaver. And so I'm going to take you through that process right now. So the first thing I'm going to just, the first thing that we have to do is we're going to have to write our own little text file and place it in a little directory. And it's going to seem really dumb that we have to do this. I kind of wish that there was a better way, but this is all I got for you on this one. So let's just go through it. I'm going to open up Windows Explorer. I'm going to go to my preferences directory. It's by default stored in your documents, and under documents, Houdini 17.5. So here, this is an important folder. This has all sorts of stuff. It's going to store your Houdini environment file, which you are going to be using to set all sorts of things. Like if you were to install, a third-party render engine, this is where you would be sort of manipulating little text files to get that to work. Any presets you save for nodes, those will be stored in here. And if you don't have a scripts folder, you're going to want to create a scripts directory. So mine is empty because I've deleted the file that I need to create. I'm just going to delete this so we can all follow along. So inside our Houdini 17.5 folder, there's no scripts folder. We're going to hit new folder and we're going to type scripts in lowercase letters, SCRIPTS. Cool. Now we're going to hop inside and I'm going to right click, new text document. So I'm creating a new text document right here. I'm just going to hop inside the text document and I'm going to type two simple words. Autosave on. And that's it. I'm going to save this and I'm going to close it. Now, this new text document, I'm going to just rename it. And this is going to seem even more weird. I'm going to call it 456.cmd. And I'm going to delete the .text line at the end of it. It's going to ask if you change a name, it may become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? Yes. So I'm in the version of Houdini. In my document, Houdini 17.5 preferences scripts, I'm writing a text document file with the words autosave on inside of it. And then I'm saving that file, closing it, and renaming the file to 456.cmd. Now, if I go down here to Houdini, which was previously open, I'm just going to close it. And I'm going to open it. And here we are. Just going to close this. Welcome. And now if I go under edit, you can see that autosave is on by default. And that's awesome. So once you get that autosave functionality kind of working by default, it's going to be, I don't know, it's saved my butt a bunch of times while I've been working in Houdini, and you know, things go awry like they do in any 3D program and you get a crash or whatever. You're going to want to have that. Now, in a project where you haven't actually saved a file yet, when autosave kicks on, a window is going to pop up. Now, that's going to happen any second now. Once we reach the 1 minute mark, it's going to start barking at me and asking if I want to save the file that I'm currently working on. Just to make sure that it actually does start to do something. I don't know if I have to change this file or not in order for that to kick in, but I'm just going to throw it on a GeoNode just to see if it helps trigger the autosave process from kicking in. Come on. All right. And here you can see it has popped up the save as dialog for me without me prompting it to do anything. And if you can choose at this point to actually save your file, but if you ignore it, it's going to keep popping up every interval you have set for your autosave. It can get really annoying. So sometimes if I'm not trying to actually have this pop up and I don't want to actually save Houdini, I'll actually just do something dumb like just drag this off to the bottom so I don't have to look at it popping up all the time, because it won't continue to pop up if it's open, and you can still continue to work around in Houdini if this window is open. So if you have a second monitor, I'll drag it off or whatever. But that's just something to be aware of. Now the process is a little bit different on a Mac. It's a little bit more convoluted. So I'm going to just hop over there real quick and get that going on. So let's just cancel out of this, and I'm going to get my Mac here and start doing the process on the Mac. Okay, so here we are in Houdini, and you can see under my menu up here, the autosave option. If I turn it on, you get a little check mark there. If I close Houdini and open it back up, it should go away. So I'm going to just close this. I'm going to shrink that, and then I'm going to reopen it. And autosave is off. Now, the location of the directory in which the preferences are saved on the Mac is in a completely hidden place. So let's just let me see here. Yeah. So in order to get to it, we got to get to our user preferences directory. This is the user library, not the actual computer library. So if I go into Finder, you can see that we've got in our Macintosh hard drive, I'm going to just go into list view here. There is the library here, but we actually need the user library. And a few versions of OS X ago, they started hiding that. So I'm going to drop into my Mark Fancher user folder, and you can't see the library here. It used to be here, but it's not here anymore. So to get around that, we got to go into terminal, which is going to suck. So let's do that. I'm going to type in terminal And here we are. So the trick to getting into showing hidden folders on the Mac goes as follows. You just write exactly as I am, defaults, defaults, write com.apple.finder. And then we got to follow, it's case sensitive here. So I'm going to do a capital A, PPLE, Apple show all files in camel case. And then say true in caps and hit enter. And then I'm going to type out kill all with the capital A and then capital Finder and hit enter again. Now it reopens Finder, and you can see that I was doing this before, so it's already navigated there, but I'm going to just pop all the way back up here and collapse this down. And you can see that my user folder has all these hidden grayed out folders visible. So I'm going to go down to the library here. And library, I'm going to go to preferences, which is here. And I'm going to scroll down until I find Houdini. All right. So you'd find your Houdini directory, spin that down, find the version of Houdini. I've got files going all the way back to 12.1 on here. That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, so Houdini 17.5. You're going to open that up. This is where you'll find your environment file. Very important file if you need to be installing any like third-party, plugin, digital asset libraries, stuff like that. So in here, there isn't a script. So I'm just going to hop into 17.5 folder and just make it like the actual folder that I'm in. I'm going to right-click, new folder, scripts. I'm going to hop in here, and I'm just going to open up TextEdit. And let's see here. Let's do new document. And I'm going to type in 456, or I'm going to type in autosave on. File, we're going to save this. And I got to navigate all the way back to that. So let's go up to, oh, this is a bummer. I'm just going to save it to my desktop and drag it in there. So we're going to go to the desktop here, and I'm going to save this as 456. I'm going to cancel out of this real quick. Actually, the text format was in rich text. I'm going to make it plain text here. So it's a plain text document now. I'm going to just try this one more time. Let's say save. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Yeah, this is, yeah, it's using these Unicodes and stuff. That's what we want. I'm going to type in 456.txt for now. That's good. I'm going to close this. I'm going to pop over here. I'm going to rename this extension CMD. It's going to ask, and if I really want to do that, I'm going to say yes, I want to use CMD. And then I'm going to go, here's my scripts folder that we navigated to in the user library. It's cool. I'm going to just grab this guy and drop it in there. Now let's close down Houdini, see if that worked. And it looks like it worked. Autosave is on. Awesome. Cool. I don't think I've actually done that on a Mac before, so glad that worked out okay. All right, cool. So that is the basics of about how to get autosave running and how to get your projects set up. We're going to do way more with working in our project directories in the coming lessons, but it's just important. I felt like it was worth having its own chapter just to like kind of go over that and get you on board with all that kind of stuff. So with that, I will catch you in the next lesson. We're going to do some procedural based expression type work.